that circulating levels of androgens aren't what control sex drive. Right? Okay, now, there's really only one parental test that we looked at. What is our one parental test? Pup retrieval. Latency to pup retrieval. Right? So, one group of, right, nulliparous, right? I mean, I think, so people got really confused with nulliparous and primiparous. Which is the most vulnerable group? First-time moms, right? First-time moms are going to be the most vulnerable, right? Because we know that really the only mom that we can affect is the first-time mom. Once you're experienced mom, you can basically take their brain out almost, and they're still going to parent, right? I mean, that's okay. I mean, that's like, so we just want to, one group, we're going to do latency for pup retrieval, and we can do it, right? One group gets the treatment, one group doesn't. Now, in a prospective question, if we are trying to measure partner preference, what kind of experiment will we do? Okay, so what does that look like? So you can't say, if we're going to measure partner preference, you'd use a partner preference experiment. And so yes, that's true, but what would that look like? Yes? Three-chamber test. Okay, if we want to do a test of aggression, what is a good aggression model that we continue to use all the time? Resident intruder. Again, don't reinvent the wheel, right? Start simple, right? What is the question? Does the drug affect X? Well, okay, I'm going to use a test that measures X. That's it, right? We're not going to make complicated multi-year experiments, right? I'm just trying to get you to connect, right? So there's the question, partner preference. Well, how do I know if partner preference exists? Well, I give them a choice between their partner and something else, right? How do I know that aggression has changed? Well, I throw another animal in there and see how aggressive they are to it, right? And I can compare that to the normal condition, right? Okay, let's see. So most people did well on this. Some people botched the definitions, but most people got attractivity, proceptivity, and receptivity. Attractivity is, the value of the female to the male, right? Stimulus value, whatever, how attractive the female is to the male. Proceptivity is active courtship, right? It's the appetitive phase for females. Females do things to males. Receptivity is their responsiveness to male advances. Right? The three types of reproductive behavior. Type 1 is the spontaneous ovulation, spontaneous luteal phase. Type 2 is the induced ovulation and spontaneous luteal phase, like rabbits. Right? The first one was humans, the second one was rabbits. Type 3 is spontaneous ovulation and induced luteal phase. That is like rodents. Okay? Now, what's the relationship between prolactin and testosterone in birds? It's inverse, right? They're just inversely related. Testosterone goes up, prolactin goes down. You could have said inversely related. You could say testosterone goes up and prolactin goes down, right? Vice versa, right? Okay. Altricial, these are the helpless ones. Luteal phase is a pseudopregnancy. The she-male, these are the snakes that smell like females so that they can get swarmed. PEI, this is actually the Coolidge effect, right? So the absolute is no stimuli can generate a sexual response in males. And then you have your relative refractory phase. This is your Coolidge effect, where a novel stimulus can elicit a sexual response. Then we have how is receptivity regulated in ring doves. So basically, the female has to hear her own coo, right? Now, there was a lot of elaborate descriptions of this which were correct, right? Which is the male coos, then the female coos in response to the male. But the important thing about the ring doves is that the female cooing herself is what regulates her receptivity.
That's worth 4 points?
That's worth 3.
Oh, 3 points.
All of them were 3 except for PEI, which has a little notation
Gotcha.
that it was 4. So, number 1, was one I don't usually put on there, but we talked about it so much in class that I felt I would be remiss if I didn't put it on there for you guys. Must have been preparing so much for it, so I felt like I owed it to you. Basically, the question, as I said, I think most people did well on number 1, did pretty well on number 2. Like 3 and 4, I think were the ones, generally speaking, that had the highest scores overall, and 5 and 6 were by far the lowest. Okay, so the first one is really, and we're not going to kind of go through all of them. Notice that each one is worth 9 points, and roughly it's broken into, right, the description of the experiment, did you get the critical comparisons, and what's the takeaway, right? So they don't have to be equivalent in terms of the length of the response, but that's generally the sort of idea with the grading. If you got 7 or above, same sort of classic thing. If you're getting 7 or above, you've got most of the idea, right? If you're getting 4, 5, or 6, you're missing something big, right? If you're getting 1, 2, or 3, you're probably not even talking about the right experiment, right? Okay, so 9 is the relationship between testosterone and dopamine as with respect to copulation, right?
Which one are you talking about?
I'm talking about number 1.
Oh.
You said no.
You did.
Is there a 9? No. All right, so I'm talking about number 1 with the dopamine. Okay. So dopamine and testosterone, right? This is the relationship between them, and the castrated non-copulators versus the castrated copulators is really the critical comparison, which allows us to understand the relationship between testosterone, dopamine, and copulatory behavior, which is that dopamine is the primary mediator of copulatory behavior, right? The second one is, again, another one that, sometimes it's on exam, sometimes not, but we talked about it a lot of times. So the take home, right, is really 2 parts for this one, right? Which, if you're trying to score how it turned out, the take home is that you do need testosterone, but the dosage itself above the threshold is not important, right? Circulating levels of androgens do not determine sex drive. Now, the critical comparisons involve, right, the reduction of everyone to close to 0 after castration, and then low dose versus high dose. There is no difference in the pattern. The high dose and the low dose are essentially the same. That's why we can conclude that circulating levels of androgens are not the primary mediator of drive. Their drive was restored and not elevated, right, by the high dose.
Right.
Okay, so 3 now is proceptivity, right? These are female monkeys in the non-breeding season, so that the males are unresponsive, okay? The critical comparisons, right, again, so what we're asking here is, does estrogen affect proceptivity? So our critical comparisons will be estrogen versus not estrogen, right? And we see higher amounts of approach, contact, groom, presentation. You didn't have to say all of them, but you had to say that there were comparisons between the different behaviors, between an estrogen animal and a non-estrogen animal, and that the summation is, yes, estrogen does mediate proceptivity, right? The next one is attractivity, right? So this is not, we're not really asking about male acceptance rate, right? We're using male acceptance rate as a proxy for proceptivity, right? Just like we're using presentation, we're using presentation as a proxy for proceptivity. We're using male acceptance rate as a proxy for attractivity. That's what we're interested in. How attractive, or does a female's attractiveness to males change as a result of her having estrogen or not? And the answer to that question is yes, right? It does. And again, critical comparisons are no hormone versus estrogen, and it's the same kind of thing, right? The same kind of answer, right? You don't say estrogen has an impact on attractivity. Estrogen increases attractivity of females, and your critical comparison will involve some kind of, the way a lot of people did it was to say it's about 50% on average for females without estrogen and close to 90-some% with estrogen. Therefore, estrogen increases attractivity. Now, I'm going to say one thing about this. These next two, right? First off, number 5 was complicated, but it also, I don't know if there's a figure we spent more time on, certainly for parental behavior. The other thing I'm going to mention is notice that these figures are clustered by the chapter that they relate to. Okay? So this, if there was a common mistake of people that answered, a lot of folks didn't answer this one even, but for those that answered and didn't do well on it, it was about sexual behavior, right? Male or female sexual behavior. And so again, I'm not gonna like change this up for the next exam, but these are kind of grouped in with the chapters that they go to, right? So anyway, I'll just make that point again, maybe a test hack of some sort. So the first one, right? What are we asked? This is a complicated figure. This was probably the most difficult one. I should say that I would say figure 1 and figure 5 were the most difficult figures to answer because there were so many parts to each of those things, right? Like I said, typically I would have one or the other, but since you guys we spent so much time on the dopamine figure, and again, people by and large did really well on that one. So I feel that one was pretty good. This one, less so. So what we're really interested in here is parental behavior. This is the pup sensitization paradigm, where we are continually exposing females to the presence of pups. Now, it on average takes a non-parent, right? That's what a nulliparous female is, a non-parent, about 4.5 days of pup exposure to retrieve pups. Now, when said, at that point, nulliparous becomes an about to be primiparous mom, and then ultimately a primiparous mom, just before birth, she has a massive reduction in the latency to retrieve. So this means that essentially the timing of the hormones is really important. Now, the other component here is that the change is relatively permanent. So notice that while the after lactation ends, you see the pup retrieval time expand a little bit, but not much, right? And so essentially motherhood is permanent, right? It can be induced by the stimulus. That's takeaway number 1. It is timed up to birth, and once it occurs, it persists, right? You don't go back when you don't have a kid. You don't go back to being a nulliparous mom in terms of your parental behavior. Okay, the last one. This is again, I think this was the worst of all of them, was this last one here. Okay, so they just did this to nulliparous females with different lesions. That's all, right? This is days, right? It's the same days. It's latency to retrieve. That's right there above it. So what it shows is that these are lesions to the olfactory system, right? And really the takeaway from this is that, right, nulliparous females find, or whether, there were a number of ways that I thought was great, the way people phrased it, that the smell of pups inhibits maternal behavior, right? Or they find the smell of pups aversive, right? That this why this is like this is actually explained by this figure, which is kind of why I put them together, but that's okay. But that's the basic idea. So the last one for graduate students, this is female paced mating, right? And how that increases your basically probability of getting pregnant. And so this is really all about female choice. So when females choose, right? When females choose, their reproductive success is higher, right? This is very important in a rodent where they have a sexual reflex. Now, the last one, there's a lot of complicated this and that, but the message is actually really simple. They are interested in how gallin neurons affect parental behavior in males, and stimulating gallin neurons in males reduces aggression and increases parental behavior, suggesting that gallin neurons are responsible for parental behavior in males. Okay. Overall, I think it was great. Like, we did much better on this exam. And so while there won't be probably as many extra points, the exam will be a little bit shorter for you. So that will be good, I think, generally speaking. But hopefully we know the kind of pattern that we're after now. Right? Yes. Yes.
So are some of these figures from earlier exams going to be on that one too?
Some, yeah.
Some of
Some,
them,
yes, some no.
Some new, right?
Yeah.
What you ask?
If some of the figures from our earlier exams are going to be on the
Way in the
next
back.
exam as well, or the final.
The figures are the ones that, in the last exam, are these figures that be the kind of the same ones, or?
Oh, so that's the same question. So
Some of-
on the final, some of them will be the same that you've seen in other exams, and some will be ones from the pool of questions from that section that we didn't get to.
What? So like stuff that we didn't go over?
Not stuff that we didn't go over, right? So there's a pool of things that we went over, but obviously, so for parental behavior, there was probably 5 figures, of which we chose 2, right? So we might have one, you'll probably have the pup retrieval one, and another one. Right?
When is the next exam? Really?
Are you serious? It's next Thursday?
Are we serious?
Wow.
Yeah, let's change that a little bit.
I can't change it.
Let's make it better.
No, next Tuesday is the last day of class. Is that right? That must be right. Well, so there's a final exam, and then there's an exam, a third exam.
Yeah, exam 3 is on the 18th, no class, and then final on the 25th.
Right. So the 18th is technically the last day of regular classes, of which we have an exam, and then finals
Next
week
exam is on the 18th.
is
Exam 3.
Yeah.
later.
So Thursday, no class on the Tuesday.
Yeah. So no. Yes. Right. That's good.
Yeah, no class.
I thought there was another week.
So there's not much on the last
So we don't
exam,
have to-
right?
Two more
Because we
classes,
just took this
exam.
exam.
No, we took it a little while ago, right? I had a head injury there and couldn't get it to you. I should have had it last week, but this you thought it was long to take. It was long to grade too. Turns out.
Yeah.
Like I need to shorten. I'm like, and then I started adding. I'm like, man, this is a bit long. Oh wow, it's 125 points. So that's a lot. Yep. I know it doesn't seem like it. Okay.